Hello again and welcome back to the PhatPhish Guitar Studio. I'm Dave and today we're going to be talking a bit about guitar maintenance. This guitar here is my Tomson custom guitar. It's overdue a bit of a restring and a setup. A setup is something you should do periodically. You should be changing your strings regularly, but every so often have a bit more of a thorough check of your guitar and make sure everything's set up the way that it should be. So this has been getting used as a bit of a workhorse and, like I said, not had a lot of maintenance recently, so I thought I'd take it down, put it on the bench and run the camera while I'm doing some of the setup work on it to give you an idea of the sort of stuff that you need to do. Some of it is general sort of maintenance. Other things I'll be talking about are specific to guitars with Floyd Rose style trem, or well, any tremolo really, but there are some particular nuances with the Floyd Rose which you need to take into account when you're doing a setup. Okay, let's get the guitar downstairs onto the bench and get started. Right then, got the guitar down on the bench, and usual precautions: have an old towel or an off-cut carpet or a mat or something to protect the guitar from being scratched off any hard surfaces, and also to protect the work surface from being scratched by anything sharp on the back of the guitar. Now, for a basic setup like this, there's not a whole lot of tools that you actually need. I'm going to run through what we're going to need. Obviously you're going to need some strings. I'm changing like for like here. I'm using Ernie Ball Super Slinkies 942s. I'm sort of in the process of changing to a hybrid slinky, but I've got a set of 942s left over. That's what's on this guitar to begin with, so I'm just going to swap those over and basically get them used up. In terms of other tools, set of wire cutters, very useful. String winder. Saves you a lot of time. Going to be checking neck relief, so set of feeler gauges is very useful for that. To help me set the neck relief, just a capo. It's just a cheap little keyring cap over that will do the job. Tuning device, that's just a little clip-on headstock tuner. Not super accurate, but it'll do just for what we're going to be doing here. And full set of Allen keys. I only need one or two for everything on this guitar, but I can never remember which one it is, so always got a full set. Useful to have some just polishing rags, cleaning cloths and so on. Occasionally you might want to replenish or rejuvenate the fingerboard, so lemon oil is very good for that. Obviously if you've got a lacquered fretboard you're not going to use that, but if it's just like bare wood, like rosewood fingerboard like this, then lemon oil. Useful to have something like the Swiss Army knife, just because generally it's a useful tool, and like I would always do for any job, a cup of coffee. As you can see, I've got my personalised mug here. So that's everything pretty much that we need. I'm going to get this cleared away and we'll get started on the setup job itself. First thing I'm going to do is check the neck relief. I can do this now because I'm changing like for like string gauges, so the amount of pull on the strings on the neck against the truss rod will be the same with the new strings, because I'm changing 9-42s with 9-42s. I've done a more detailed video talking about setting neck relief, but basically what we're going to be doing is putting a capo on at the first fret, fretting the strings at the 17th fret, and then measuring the string height halfway along at the 7th fret. So there should be a little bit of clearance there. It tells us that we've got a slight bow in the neck. If the strings are touching, then the neck's crowned. If there's too much of a gap, then the neck's got a bow and we need to adjust the truss rod down here. And for this you don't need a particularly luxurious or expensive capo. For this I'm just using a little keyring capo that I picked up a while ago. All we need is something that will keep the strings clamped down at the first fret. So put that on. And I'm going to be measuring the string height using a feeler gauge. Now I know the sort of string height that I'm going for, these are metric feeler gauges. I'm looking for about 0.25 to 0.3 millimeters of clearance. So I need these two gauges. So these are a little bit oily, so let's clean those up a little bit so I'm not getting oil everywhere. So it's a case of fretting the string at the 17th fret and I'm going to put the 0.25mm feeler gauge in under the 7th fret. That is actually touching. That's telling me that the neck actually is not quite the shape I need it to be. That's the 1/4 mil. Let's try that. So if I just play the note, yeah, that is. I can hear that buzzing ever so slightly. I'll try it on the bass side and fretting at the 17th, putting the feeler gauge in at the 7th. Again, that is just touching. So I think that the neck has settled with a little bit more of a crown on than I'd like. So there's going to be a little bit of truss rod adjustment needed there. We can do that with an Allen key. That's reasonably easy. It's not something to be particularly frightened of. As I said in that other video about adjusting neck relief, as long as you do it gently, like 1/4 turns, half turn, no more than a 1/4 turn, even half that, even an 1/8 of a turn at a time, just ease it in and you should be fine. So get some Allen keys out to do that. Okay, so I'm just going to go in with an Allen key, feel my way in there. Yeah, feels like the right size. It's got a good snug fit, and just turn that. Just that's an 1/8 of a turn, probably no more, just to slacken the neck, the truss rod off ever so slightly. And what I'll do is just let the guitar sit there for a few minutes and just settle, and then we can take the neck relief measurement again. So having given that time to settle, back in again, measure with the feeler gauge, and that's feeling better. That little tweak of the truss rod is just put a little bit more of a bow into the neck. That's what we're looking for. So that's the neck relief looking okay. Now we can get on with taking the strings off the guitar. So remove that capo. And because this is a Floyd Rose equipped guitar, the locking nut, need to take the locking nut off here. So this is a Allen key, this size. Just slacken these off. Now what I'm going to do for this particular setup is I'm going to take all 6 strings off at once, because I want to give the guitar a good general clean and so on. Generally with a Floyd Rose trem, I would recommend just taking and changing the strings one at a time, because it kind of keeps the balance on the tremolo a little bit easier. You take one string off, put a replacement string on, bring it back up to pitch, and the other remaining 5 strings are in tune. Taking all 6 strings off makes the whole thing a bit more laborious. But like I say, I want to do a full clean on the guitar, so it's easy to do that with the strings off. What you can do if you want is wedge something underneath the bridge to stop it from moving back too far, just to kind of keep the strings in roughly the right ballpark. I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to crack on and just take the strings straight off. I don't mind spending a little bit of extra time. So what I'm going to do is slacken the strings off with the tuning pegs. Now it's tempting to say, I don't need these strings anymore, I'm just going to cut them. Actually, why am I doing this by hand when I've got one of these? I've got a string winder, makes the job a lot easier. Yeah, it's tempting to say I don't need these strings anymore, so I'll just cut them. But there's a bit of a shock to your tuning heads if you just got the strings right under tension and then you cut them. There's such a massive release. It shouldn't if you've got good quality modern tuning machines, but if you've got something a little bit older, particularly on a vintage guitar, or you've got something a bit lower quality, a little bit cheaper, then a sudden release of string tension might not be such a good thing. So give it a good few turns just to slacken the strings off, and then we can just go in with some string cutters. Now I've actually got this is a Planet Waves string winder and string clipper, so I can use these for clipping the strings. What I do have though is just a proper set of wire cutters. I find these give it a more precise cut. Use them for like trimming strings off at the end of the job. So now we can just take these old strings off. So that's the strings off down at the headstock end. What I'm going to have to do, actually having just taken it out, I'm going to put the tremolo arm back in, because I need to get an Allen key under to release the saddle block, so I'm going to take the strings out of the bridge, because the springs are still on the tremolo block. It's pulled right the way back, and I'm going to struggle to get the Allen key in, possibly without damaging the finish on the guitar. So just push the tremolo arm down, put the Allen key in, just give that a little twist, just to loosen off the saddle blocks. So having done that, the strings should just pull free. Six string thing needs just a little bit more of a turn. Okay, so take the strings out. Again, twist those around and wrap them up safely. Right then, so with the strings off, just do a proper visual inspection of the guitar. It's a little bit knocked. There's a few dings in the lacquer, but generally everything's okay. What I do want to do though is give it a reasonably good clean. It's been a complete workhorse of a guitar. It's not had a good polish or anything for a long time. So got some polishing rags and some polish. I'm just going to give it a bit of a general clean, which is why I wanted to take all the strings off, so I can get into all the little nooks and crannies a little bit more easily. Same thing down at the headstock end, and we'll do a visual inspection on the neck in a minute as well. Just flip the guitar over, its back, so onto its front so we can see the back. Again, a few dings, but everything's okay. The control plates, covers and so on, there's no screws dropped out or anything. It's just general wear and tear on the back. So nothing particular to worry about, just a bit of a dust and a clean and a polish, and that's all going to be good. Looking down at the headstock end, again same thing, everything looks okay. There's a couple of little dings, but nothing to worry about. We'll just give it a clean and a bit of a polish. Looking at the frets up close, a little bit of wear. To be honest, this is kind of getting to the age now. It could do with either a really good fret dress or possibly a new set of frets, because in some places are getting a little bit worn. Thing to check though is just running fingers down the side. Make sure there's no really sharp edges that's going to come out and kind of hurt you when you're playing. There's no evidence of the frets lifting up. What I can also do is just take a straight edge down. I think I've done a video about this as well. Over 3 frets, and make sure that there's no high spots. So you can just do what's called like a rocker test. I haven't got a proper fret rocker tool, but just a straight edge like I found a credit card actually will do the job well enough. So we'll check the frets in a minute as well. But first off, let's just get some bit of cleanliness on the go and give the guitar a bit of a clean. So to start off, I'm just going to use just a dusting cloth just to get in all the little nooks and crannies where when the guitar's been stood, dust has settled over time. Even in the cleanest house, you're still going to get dust, and it doesn't necessarily get knocked out by playing. So this is, you might think that cleaning the guitar is cosmetic. In a way it is, but it helps to protect the finish on the guitar. Now, in terms of polish, you can get proper guitar polish. If you want to use that, that's great. However, there's nothing wrong with just using just regular furniture polish. I mean, I remember when I got this guitar, built, talking to Richie, who was the luthier who built this, and he said, if you can buy proper guitar polish, but if you want just something like Mr. Sheen, which is like a brand sort of like furniture polish that we have here in the UK, he says that's fine. Just use that. Use it sparingly. Make sure it doesn't get sprayed into the electrics or anything, and you're fine. So all I'm going to do is just get some polish. I'm going to, rather than spraying it directly onto the guitar, and spray it onto a cloth. So you can see why it's so much easier doing this when the strings are off the guitar, because you can get in all these little spots, which would be very hard to do if you're trying to work around where the strings are. And same thing down to the headstock end. Difficult doing this and not blocking the view from the camera, but get on there, bit of polish, then go to a dry part of the rag, the cloth, and give it a bit of a buff. The same thing down at the body end. Run the cloth over, so that's cleaned everything up nicely. Also want to inspect the neck a little bit. As I said before, the frets are looking a little bit worn, but I don't want to go to the extremes of doing a fret dress or even a refret here. Just basically, I know generally they're seated okay. What I want to check though is that there's no lifting up or anything like that, or any undue wear. So if you've got a proper fret rocker tool, that's great. If not, you can get away with just using like a credit card will do. So I've got my Costa Coffee Club card. Place that over the first, second and third frets, and there's no rocking. If that second fret was too high, then it would be going like that, but it's actually okay. Try this next thing on the second, third and fourth. Feels good. Third, fourth and fifth, and so on. We'll do this all the way up the neck. So I've done another video where I talk about this in a little bit more detail, so I'll not go into it to a great deal here. It's just basically going along and making sure that when you place something over 3 frets, there's no rocking of the thing that you're measuring with, which tells you the frets are all level. Fingerboard itself is actually pretty good nick. It's reasonably clean. Nothing untoward, no gunk or DNA or whatnot, so nothing to worry about there. What you can do occasionally is spray a little bit of lemon oil just onto the fingerboard, let it soak in, and then wipe the excess off. It's not something I do with every setup, and to be honest I don't think the fingerboard particularly needs it, but if you want to do a full setup, something like lemon oil is a useful thing to have. Okay, so that's the old strings off, guitar given a bit of a clean and check over. Next we want to get a new set of strings on. Thing to do with a Floyd Rose style trem like this is to reset the fine tuners so that in the halfway position. As the old strings are being used, the fine tuners will have gone up, gone down, whatever. So basically what I do is I take one all the way down, so it's at the top of one here, take the third string one all the way up, so they give me a guide, and then I can measure, put the B string one so halfway between the two, so that's in the middle, and then adjust the others so they're all about that same sort of height. So I know I've got some adjustment up and I've got some adjustment down across all of these. What I'm going to do now is actually put the tremolo arm back in, because I'm going to need to move the trem forward to be able to get the Allen key in for the saddle blocks. I'm going to assume that the intonation is roughly right. This one looks like it slipped a little far back, but I'm sure the intonation was okay last time I checked it. So I'll take those. I'll not make any initial adjustments to the saddles for intonation. We're going to look now at getting the strings on. So what I'm going to do is just basically string up. Now with the Floyd Rose tremolo system, you don't need the ball end part of the string. So some people, what they'll do is they'll just cut that off and put it into the saddle. What I prefer to do is just string through the machine head, the tuning peg. Just with the plain end, feed that through. Now, one thing I like about the Ernie Ball strings is they're wound right the way to the end. Some strings I've seen, the winding kind of stops short, and you need to cut that off, so it's the wound part that's going into the saddle block. So pull that through, push it down. You need to push it square. Do this so you can see. Put it down, push it square in, straight down, and just kink it over. And a bit difficult to do with one hand. Push that down. And just tighten that up. Don't over tighten it. This is important, because if you tighten it too much, yes, it'll get a good grip with the string, but I have actually seen it where if you tighten that up too far, it will actually fracture the saddle block, and you need a new saddle block. You don't want to do that. It's just enough to grip the string. Remember, if it's got a good sharp bend in it here, then it's naturally kind of not going to want to come out in like an up down sort of direction. So with some tension along the string, it doesn't need to be like tight here. So just tighten the thing up just enough to grip it. Okay, so what we'll do is tune that string up to roughly pitch. Now everybody's got their own preferred way for how they put strings onto the tuning post. You know, different ways of tying it off or whatever. Personally, my approach is pull it so it's reasonably tight, take a little bit of excess, go back to the machine head, to the tuning peg, and just bend that. Hold that so the string is underneath the loose end. And it's just a case of putting a few turns onto the string to put some tension on. This is quite tricky to do when there's a camera between me and the guitar. Give that a couple of turns, then get a string winder, saves so much time. Important thing to remember is, as you're doing this, make sure that you feed the string the right way through the string tree. So the E strings should go to the outside of the string tree screws, and the middle four strings should go underneath. So that just helps you to get the break angle across the locking nut. Helps you get the guitar tuned up properly. Okay, so let's get those other strings on. So I've got all the strings on the guitar now. What I'm going to do is come along with a set of wire cutters and basically just cut off the loose ends. Just nice and tight cut up to the tuning pegs. Taking care just to cut the loose end of the string and not to cut any of the string that's actually around the machine head itself and the tuning peg. Okay, so the guitar is now strung but completely out of tune. And with a Floyd Rose equipped guitar, this is probably the most tricky, or not tricky, but fiddly part of the process, because we need to tune all 6 strings, and every time we tune one string, it'll pull on the bridge and knocks the other 5 strings out of tune. So you need to be, it's a case of going through and tuning and repeating and tuning and repeating. For this, I'm just going to use a clip-on headstock tuner. Normally, I've got a Polytune, TC Polytune on my pedal board, but just for roughing the tuning in, I'll just use this. So, starting off on, say, the D string, that's actually slightly sharp. I'm not going to bother tuning that because I know the other strings, when I tune those up, it'll end up pulling the bridge. I can just tell for the angle that it's at, it's still quite a ways back. So tune the A string, close enough, G. Again, really all I'm doing here is just getting the tuning rough so the trem's reasonably in balance, and then I can go through and be a bit more precise about it all. Okay, we're starting to get close now, I think. So more or less, at least when I'm tuning a string, the first string here roughly to E, and the B string is roughly to B, G is roughly to G, D is roughly to D, A roughly at A, and E is roughly to E. Wondering why I'm being just, it's rough, it doesn't have to be precise. Remember, these are brand new strings, and having put them on and got them roughly to tune, so things are roughly in tune down at the headstock end. And if we take a look at the bridge now is set roughly how I want it. Because I've changed like for like string gauges, there's no more or less pull on the bridge against the springs inside the tremolo cavity, and this is reasonably flat to the body. If anything, it's slightly raised. That's fine. Personally, I like a little bit more upward movement. There's plenty enough downward movement on a Floyd Rose trem anyway, and I actually like quite to have a little bit of more movement back over. So the fact it's slightly forward is not a problem. Generally, you're looking to have it kind of flat, not pulled back like that, not pulled forward by the string. So you want something reasonably level. But there's probably a bit more tension in the strings than there will be for the final setup, because these are brand new strings. What we need to do is give them a good stretch and then start tuning up properly. And giving them a good old stretch is basically that. It's a fairly unscientific exercise of just getting them and giving the strings a stretch, because what you don't want is to tune it perfectly up to pitch, and then as the strings stretch slightly and settle, the whole guitar goes out of tune. You might as well get the excess tension. It's like excess tension, if that's the right word. They will stretch and settle over time. So basically, we'll just give them a stretch now, then we'll tune them up to pitch, and tuning will be a lot more stable. So this time when I'm tuning, I'm looking for the strings to be right where I want them. So remember, what I've done is I stretched the strings, so there's less tension in them now. So the strings down at the springs in the tremolo are now pulling the tremolo slightly flatter, so that pulls the string slightly sharp. So let's get everything tuned up to pitch, and then we can check the intonation. Okay, so all the strings are tuned to pitch now. The last thing I want to check is the intonation. Intonation basically means when you play the open string and then you play the same string fretted at the 12th fret, the 12th fret should be exactly an octave higher. It might be a few cents higher or a few cents lower, in which case you need to adjust the length of the string slightly. Now I've done a more detailed video about intonation, so I'll put a link to that in the information section below. So if we start off on the E string here, play that open and then play it fretted. That looks spot on actually, that's in pitch there, and now I'm doing this on the bench. You need to make sure when you're pressing down you're using the same sort of pressure that you would when you're playing. If you really press on you can make the string go sharp, so play that E string there, play it fretted. If anything, that is slightly sharp, so what I need to do is lengthen that string slightly, because the fretted note is slightly higher than it needs to be. So what I want to do is slacken this screw off, pull the block back ever so slightly and tighten that down. Obviously the strings are under tension at the minute, so I'll need to slacken the strings off to make that adjustment. So I'll check all 6 strings and then make a judgment as to whether the saddle block needs to go forward or backwards. Certainly I think this A string looks like over time the saddle's being pulled forward slightly. I think that one needs to come back. These other 4 actually look okay. But like I say, we'll check all 6 and decide if we need to lengthen or shorten the string by moving the saddle forwards or backwards. Take the tension off the strings and make the adjustment, tune everything back and check again, and it's just a case of check, adjust, repeat and until you get everything spot on. Okay, so after a bit of jiggery pokery, I've reset the saddles for the bottom E and the A strings, which I'll just zoom in slightly and show you something with the way the saddle blocks are set on these strings here. So in the base plate here, there's actually a number of screw holes going back over that these screws can go into. So in this case, these 4 strings are on into the screw hole furthest forward. The bottom E string is second one back, and it just basically gives you a little bit more sort of scope for where you put the saddle. In this case of my A string, it was, I think at one point the intonation had been set with the screw in here. I needed to pull it a little bit further back, and it was going to be at the point where it really wasn't going to grip quite so well here. It was part of the screw wasn't going to be in contact, so taking the screw out and moved it to the further the next screw hole back, so it's got full contact with the saddles. These are tight enough so the strings aren't going to pull and make the saddle blocks move forwards or backwards. But again, be careful not to over tighten, because you can crack these blocks, so you need to be careful. So with everything tuned to pitch, the last thing to do is put the locking nut pieces back in place, tighten those up with an Allen key, final check for tuning, and guitar's ready to play again. Right, and that's that. New set of strings on, setup done. You'll notice one thing I didn't do during that setup was check the string height. That's one of the things I prefer to leave to last, and basically just check organically, check it myself, see how it feels, rather than just doing it by measurement. I've got the guitar, everything should be right. Yeah, that feels good right the way down the fingerboard. I don't think there's anything that I need to do in terms of changing the string height. To be honest, I didn't expect that there would be, because I haven't actually changed any variables. It's the same gauge strings and everything. But it's one of those things that you do need to check. And also worth checking all the electrics on the guitar. You know, if there was a fault on the electrics, you probably would have noticed during your playing. But just to do a check, you know, we've got the bridge humbucker on its own, both pickups together, and the neck pickup. Go to the bridge. This is humbucker, single coil, neck pickup, humbucker, single coil, so we can hear the difference in sound there. So those switches are working, both the pickups together. Face reversal switch. So yeah, the changes in sound I'm expecting to get, I'm getting. And lastly, we'll just check the tone control. So bridge pickup. So we can hear the volume and the tone controls there doing what they need to do. So electrically, the guitar is sound. So that's that. Everything I've done there is the sort of thing, if you've got the confidence, you can do it yourself. Even the truss rod adjustment. You don't need to be a professional luthier to do this sort of thing, but if you're not sure what you're doing, take the guitar to the technician or at your local guitar store to do the work for you. You don't want to risk damaging your guitar by making a mess of the job. But no, if you know what you're doing, you should be fine, and it's the sort of stuff you can do yourself. The one thing I did say that the guitar probably is due at some point is a refret. Certainly it wouldn't hurt to do a bit of a fret dress or a polish, but that's kind of beyond the scope of this video. Just want to show you the general sort of set of tasks that you do. A fret dress is one of those very infrequent jobs that you do just when the frets are really starting to wear, which is kind of where my particular guitar is getting to, because it has been used quite a lot. Okay, so that's that. I hope you found that useful. As always, please like, subscribe, comment, etc. down there. And if you've got any suggestions for future videos, or you want to ask me a question, then if you go here, there's a form where you can submit your question. I'll try and get around to answering it in a future video. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.